Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Johanna. For those of you who are new here, welcome. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. In this video, it's episode 2 of my reading journal system for 2022. And if that is of interest to you, please stay tuned. Okay, so I'm actually filming this out of order. This will actually be the second video in the series, but the first video of the series will be showing you, or I would have shown you, my reading system so far. And this is a look of before the pen, if you're from the journaling community or the planning community, where I've set up my annual spreads for 2022. Now it is August, I don't know, 7, 6, 8, something. So I am doing this retroactively, and that way I can put all of my information in one place. I'll talk a little bit more about that once I actually show this to you. I am not a booktube channel. I'm not a journaling channel. I'm not a planning channel. This is just part of my creative journey, and I did want to share this with you. Now, I am sorry for the glare. That will go away in just a bit. This is a Maisie Lane Co. journal. I did purchase this a couple of years ago. It has my name and my channel name on there. You can get your journals from Maisie Lane Co. Altered like that. Whenever I have a journal, if at all possible, I do like to put a plastic cover on it just to keep the cover pristine. Now, this particular cover is one of those faux leather type covers, and so there isn't really a need for it, but I just like it. This is actually a Midori plastic cover that I cut the back apart so that I can still use this and then tape it back together. I generally don't use the pocket anyway, so this just works perfectly for me. This is going to be my ongoing reading journal system. So because I had some stats and information from 2021, it actually starts there, although it's very small in scope. And then I actually have quite a few annual trackers that I'm doing for 2022, and we'll go through that together. And then I'll tell you about my plans for some of the other pages behind this. Now, I mentioned that I'm not a booktube channel, so what you're not going to see in here is any kind of listing of new releases. I read a ton on my Kindle. In fact, it's because of my Kindle that I decided I needed a new reading journal system. I would have talked about that in the video in the first part of this series. And so I get recommendations either from Instagram or from Amazon, or sometimes from things I'm seeing in the community. I don't actually follow a lot of booktube channels. The one that I am consistently following is my friend Andy of Books and Scribbles. I'll link her channel below. But otherwise, the way that I find books is very organic. And there are some books that I know I want to read. But again, because I get all of my books from Amazon, they'll remind me. So I'm not concerned with that. I don't have a traditional TBR. I actually don't have a lot of unread physical books, but I will talk about that a little bit more once I get to that spread. I'm not doing the book favorite bracket. I don't do an index because I actually like flipping through my journal. I will do some monthly stats, sort of, but it's not a big focus of mine. I don't have reading goals. Some of the spreads that I have set up is based on what I've actually read thus far, and trying to get an average of how many books I read a month to figure out how much space I need for the rest of the year. If you might have noticed, I'm a chatty person and I don't voice over anything. So if you want something short and sweet, you are in the wrong place, sweetie. Some other things I don't do is I will only be doing a little bit of tracking on the type of book that I'm reading, and it's more so because I want to see how many Kindle Unlimited books I'm reading. Generally, when I look at a book title, I'll know whether it's a physical book or not, but for the Kindle Unlimited specifically, I want to make sure that I'm getting my value for the monthly subscription. I can tell you right now, I absolutely am. For July alone, I read 18 books, and one of them was a physical book. So one physical book and 17 ebooks. So yeah. Now, and I guess I should talk about that. I am a skimmer, skipper, back of the book gister. I just need to know the gist of the story. Now, if the story is well written, if there's lots of banter, if it sucks me in, then it is not uncommon for me to read maybe 80 or 90% of the book and just skip over things that I don't feel are necessary to the story itself, because I don't need to know all the details. If I like a story enough, I'll read it again. And it just makes it fun for me when I come across things that I know that I missed the first or the second or the eighth time around, because I don't read every single page. I don't annotate. I'm really in it just to know the story. And so the volume of books that I can get done in a month is with that in mind, just because, you know, it's not uncommon for me to skip entire chapters because, okay, no, I'm at the point I need to know how this is going to end. And then I can always go back. In the last couple of books that I've read, that's what I've done. And so when I say I've read 18 books, I have, sort of, but I also, I couldn't tell you a detailed account of all the characters. Sometimes I can't even remember their names, but I can tell you, if you should ever ask me, kind of the gist of the story, because that's what I've read. So just keep that in mind. I am not someone who needs to read out of their comfort zone. I am not looking to expand my horizon. I view reading as a hobby. It is not to compete. It is not to stack up against any channel here on YouTube or Instagram. In fact, there's very few videos on my channel that even deal with any of my reading. And so I'm not going to be tracking, you know, reading nonfiction or reading horror. Yeah, I don't care. I like YA. I like romance, fantasy, fiction. I've been loving a lot of torrid, smutty, trashy novels. I love that. And so if I'm going to treat this as a hobby, then I'm going to focus on the things that I know I enjoy versus trying to expand my horizons, because why? And that's, I just wanted to point out the things that you're not going to see in here that I've seen in other people's reading journals, just because that's not how I do this hobby. All right, so intro into this. Again, this will be a long-term reading journal. I don't know how many years I'll get in here, but it is as of January 2021. Because I had the information, I just decided to make it this spread right here. Just some thoughts on my reading. I read 16 books in 2021. The majority of that towards the end of the year. I had 3 buddy reads with my friend Andy, and according to Storygraph, and I'll link my Storygraph below, it's not updated, so I think it's good as of like June. I read 6,500 pages, and I don't really need to know that information, but I do find it interesting. And on this side, I do have the covers of all of the books I read. I actually forgot 3. And so I will need to put them here. I actually tipped this in after the fact because I remember I had 3 buddy reads with Andy, but I only highlighted 2, and then I had to go back and figure out which is the ones that I missed. This was actually part of a larger stamp that I had purchased from Amazon, and I just cut that off, stamped that next to there just to give it a rating, and then just a little blurb of my feelings. If I do any kind of journaling about books in here, it's not going to be a synopsis. You guys know I don't read in depth enough, I think, to do that. Plus, I'm really not interested in it. I don't need to do a summary of a book I've just read. But a lot of them I've read this year, I would like to put down on paper my feelings, because once we get to another spread in this, I have some feelings about some books. So coming into 2022, I do have this little cover section right here. The theme for the annual trackers, at least for the 2022 reading journal, is sort of like a poisoned dark academia garden theme. So lots of olives and browns and blacks, and this gray here. This is actually a Tombow N49. The quote is, "Someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again," and that's by C.S. Lewis. And I think that's interesting because a lot of the trashy, smutty, torrid romances that I've been reading from Amazon, specifically Kindle Unlimited, has been retellings of fairy tales, but in a very adult version, and I'm here for it. And so you'll just see themes of this throughout. I have been doing some stamping. You can see that on the background. This is some White Stag stickers that I purchased from Etsy, some washi tape, and just various things that I have in my arsenal just to make this front section look cohesive. Now, because I have the hindsight of being 8 months into the year, I know that there are actually more days read than not. In fact, for the entire 2022 year thus far, I've probably missed only about 5 days. So I thought it makes more sense to just cut this out in black, and this is from an Archer and Olive notebook pad, and then just color in with white gel pen the days that I've missed versus coloring all of the days that I've read. And to me, that just makes more sense. I do track that information in my Hobonichi Weeks Everyday Carry. I would have shown that to you in the first part of this video or in this series. And so I like doing that, and it gives me a lot of space to go ahead and decorate with more collaging and just some stamping. Now, I don't have a TBR, I mentioned that earlier, but I do have physical books that I have not read. I couldn't even tell you how many, but I would be surprised if it's more than 30. It's probably in here. Because I have space issues, I don't purchase a lot of physical books. And because in 2021, I wasn't reading a lot, I haven't purchased a lot of books. This isn't for me to check off that I've read. This is more if my friend Andy says, hey, do you want to do a buddy read? I can tell her what books that I have here. Otherwise, I'm more likely to, if she has a book she wants to read and is on her TBR, then I'll just go buy it versus I need to whittle these down. Because I'm a mood hobbyist, I will read, I will do my hobbies in what I feel like, and if it counts towards something, great, but I'm not going to stress over it. That's just not how I like to do my hobbies. This is a riff on what I've seen people do with their bookshelfies. I love the idea, but I've watched so many reading journal videos that I just wanted something different. So this is actually stamped on craft sticker paper, and then I've just assembled it in here. Over these two spreads, it comes out to a little over 160 books. So far, I think I'm upwards of like 80 books. Again, my Storygraph isn't updated for July, and perhaps even for parts of June, so I'm not 100% sure. I think the last time I checked, I was reading an average of about 13 books a month, so I wanted to have more books here so that I wouldn't have to try to figure out how to add more books later. But I really love how this looks. It's just stacks of fun, stacks of books. There's some White Stag stickers. This is also from White Stag, and then just some washi tape. And that's 2 pages there. This is actually going to be a list of the books that I've read, including the author. I do have this information in my Hobonichi Weeks, but after the end of the year, I might keep that for a few months and then it will be purged. And so I want to make sure that I have that information in a physical form, even though it will also be on Storygraph. And then I'll have my rating, and this is where I'm going to track the physical books. And I've written down what these colors are. These are mild liners. And then I also want to track my Kindle Unlimited. Again, the majority of the books I'm reading these days is on a Kindle, so it is an ebook, but specifically I want to know by the end of the year how many Kindle Unlimited books that I've read, because I am paying for a monthly subscription. Now, I will be writing this in on how I rate books, and really I chose not to do a 1-star. If a book feels like a 1-star to me, I'm going to stop reading it. In fact, if a book feels like a 2-star, I'll probably stop reading it. I don't feel like wasting my time to finish something just because I've purchased it or rented it. And so I just want to give a distinction of what's the difference between a 3, a 4, and a 5. And even in here, I won't go too detailed because it's my rating and who cares, but on Storygraph, you can do a percentage, and so I'll put the percentage there, but this will just give me an idea when I'm ranking books on where my head is at that time so I can stay consistent. Again, it's not like I have a blog or I'm writing about this. This is just for my own purposes. But because I wanted to see that for all of these, I actually made a Dutch door here. Now, I segmented the pages before I counted the spaces, and this only goes to 111. Now that might be enough, so I'm just going to leave it as is. But if I need to add more sections, what I'll do is just tape it on the side here at that same size, because I do have that Archer and Olive Neapolitan notebook, and then I can add more as sort of a tip in here. But until I start writing things in, I won't really know. Until I update Storygraph, I won't really know. If I'm projecting that I'm doing at least 13 books per month, then I definitely will need more space than this, but we'll see. I can always add to this, but I do want to keep this contained into one section, just because I've learned from the reading journal system that I have now that I don't like it scattered because of the volume that I'm reading. Here is where I'm going to do the same as I did here, where I'm going to be doing the book covers. Now, I have been avoiding this particular project because it is quite time consuming. I don't know how many I can get on a page, so just like what I just showed you, I might need to tip in some additional pages here, but I can certainly just do this in here. But I did want to cut off and make this a Dutch door so that you can see this wherever you are on this. Again, depending on how many books I've read, again, I may need more. And I've yet to decide whether I'm going to do the actual colored cover or if I'm going to print in black and white. And just because I think that might look really interesting based on the colors that I have, but I also do really like how this looks. And some of the books I've read this year, the covers are just absolutely beautiful. So I've yet to decide that, but it is a very tedious project. On Etsy, there is a shop that you can actually just outsource it to them, but it comes out to about $1 a book. And considering the volume of books that I probably will read this year, paying $100 for someone to just take that project, I don't know. I still haven't decided yet, but that's what's going to go here. And whether I do the stamping and the little synopsis, I'm not sure. Since I'll have other places that I can write things, it might just be the book covers because I do have the star ratings here, but it just really depends on once I start putting things down what I feel like. This here is sort of my favorite book bracket, but I know me. There's already at least 4 books that I can think of, or series that I've read this year, that are living rent-free in my head. I am just obsessed with the characters and I think about them all the time. And so instead of trying to funnel down to my favorite book, I'm just going to have this as a landing spot of just those books that just I love. Now there hasn't been one that I've hated, which is good. But there have been some I'm like, meh, they won't go here. Living rent-free means I loved it so much that I cannot get away from the story. I think about the story and the characters in the world that they're in all the time. And so this will be a landing spot for that. And then later on, when I get towards the end of these annual trackers, I'll talk about a little bit how I probably will expand this. This is not something that I need to do on a daily, weekly, or even monthly basis. Clearly, I'm catching up for 2022. It's just a fun project I like to do. And because I have the data somewhere else, I don't feel the need to rush. And so when I'm in the mood to start working in this, I will. In the third part of this video series, I'll actually do a flip through of this, having filled in some of the pages. So just be on the lookout for that. This is going to be a spread with my buddy reads with Andy. I plan to divide this into 12, just because if we are going to do a buddy read, it's going to be on a monthly basis. And then I'll do a little bit of my feelings on the books. We actually share that via text, so there isn't a need to do a lot of journaling, but I did want to have a spread specifically for that because I want to see the books that I've read with her for our buddy reads. And she also does a Patreon, and that buddy read is actually different from our individual buddy reads, and so I'll do the same thing here. So I've left a lot of space. It's going to be 6 books per page, and again, I'll just put a little bit of what I felt about the book if we actually have a Patreon book for that month. For July and August, we just kind of Then it goes into my 2022 stats. This ends the annual tracking section, and that's why all of the color is the same. When I start working on the monthly spreads, which might just be one side of the 2-page spread, then I'd like to keep some of the elements, definitely the black and the craft paper, but then maybe bring in some other elements there. But the annual tracking section, I just wanted to have with a similar vibe. I do want to journal at the end of the year what I thought worked about my annual trackers and what didn't. I want to have some thoughts on my reading for the year, if there's any standouts, things like that. My favorite buddy read with my friend Andy, my favorite Patreon read, and then actually some specific stats, and I'll be getting that from Storygraph. And then once we get into here, I will be doing just some scrapbooky collaging type of things for my monthly section. And really, I just want to write down what I've read for that particular month. If there are months that I have done readathons, like I did one in April, I did one in June, I'm currently doing one in August, and I plan on doing one in September, then there might actually be more pages. But otherwise, I might do 1 month on one page, 2 months on one page. It just really depends on my mood. And then after that, I plan to do a more in-depth on this one right here. So this will just have probably book covers and leave it at that, with maybe just a little bit of text, maybe a sentence or two. But then once I have my monthly section out that I anticipate for the year, then I'll go into my book squatters. And that means these books have been squatting in my head, living rent free, and I'm obsessed. I'm a little obsessed. I can tell you right now, there's a book series called The Darkness by K.F. Brain that I absolutely loved. I loved the characters there. It was Sasha and Stefan. I just finished a series by A.J. Lancaster called The Lord of Stariel, and her name is Hedda, his name is Wynn. I'm obsessed with their story. Luckily, the 4-part series is done, so I can read it. But her brother and his brother's story comes out in January. So if I had an anticipated book release section, that would go there, because I can't wait to read Marius and Rake's story. I loved Crescent City. Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas is the first Sarah J. Maas book that I've read, and it was definitely a boob puncher. That book, I thought it was going to go one way, punch me in the boob, went a different way, and then you get comfortable, and then you get punched in the boob again, and I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with that book. I do have the second book. I do plan to read it this month. I've actually been holding off on reading it because I think it can fit some prompts for Aurelium, which is hosted by G of Book Roast. And I think I read The Whispering Door. Let's see. There's a T.J. Klune book. So I read The House on the Cerulean Sea in 2021. I read the Whispering Door one. I think that's what it's called. Earlier part of this year, and I really love that one as well. So you're going to see them all here. And then when I get into the book squatters section, then I'll do a little bit of my thoughts on why I loved the books that I loved so much. And I have to tell you, I used to hate ebooks. I have always been a physical book kind of person. I love dogging the ears. I've always loved that, but I have space issues. And because I am commuting a lot more these days since pre-pandemic, my Kindle Fire is just a lot easier to carry with me when I'm waiting for a bus. And I have just been blowing through books, but I've also found a lot of books that I may not have ever purchased if I were just purchasing physical books. And so I'm kind of mad at myself for waiting so long to get a proper Kindle reader, because I absolutely love it. Anyway, that's part 2 of this series. Again, I've yet to film part 1. I'll actually probably do that after dinner today. But that one, I did have a kind of weird reading journal system, and so I just need to compile all those things. I'd love to know what you guys think of this. Leave me a comment in the comment section below if you have a reading journal. I'd love to know. All right, guys, well, that's it for me for now. And as always, aloha.